It should come as to no surprise to any of you. I find big power moves fascinating, and those strong style wrestling lifts, plexes, look absolutely devastating and painful when big men perform them. None of this 180s pound and under bull crap. Today I'm going to do a deep dive on one of the biggest men to grace the sport of wrestling, Scott Flash Norton. Welcome to Wrestling Through the Ages. Born June 15, 1961, and hailing out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, Scott Norton competed in national and international arm wrestling competitions beginning in 1979 and won over 30 championships during his arm wrestling tenure, gaining the nickname Flash for the speed in which he gained victories. This, coupled with touring the world, landed him a spot in Stallone's 1987 Over the Top movie. Training with wrestlers Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig, Hawk, and Animal during a Japanese tour, Scott was approached by New Japan Pro Wrestling and was asked to begin training as a wrestler. Scott declined at the time. Eventually, Scott would change his mind, and in late 1988, early 1989, began training under Olympic wrestling champion Brad Rheingans, wrestler, owner, and promoter Vern Gagne, and Japanese legend Masa Saito. Scott began wrestling for the AWA, and on April 13, 1989, Norton won his first match via DQ against Wayne Balloon. Norton and John Nord formed a short-lived tag team called the Lumberjacks, defeating the team of Tom Bennett and Tom Burton, the Texas Hangman, Junior Carson, and Tom Stone, as well as getting a couple of single victories. In early May of 1990, Scott Norton jumped ship to PNW and won the PNW Championship, defeating Brian Adams May 12 of 1990, but I cannot find much information on this match. Regardless, that's one heavyweight championship in under a year of becoming a pro wrestler, which is quite an accomplishment. Scott would return to Japan, this time around as a wrestler, debuting for New Japan Pro Wrestling on December 7 of 1990 in Kanagawa, Japan at 1990's Battle Finale. He tagged with Bad News Brown and Brad Rheingans, defeating future NJPW stars. He flew back to the States the following month, wrestling 3 matches for PNW, but then packed his bags, and on February 1st, 1991, Scott Norton would begin his long dedicated relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Norton tagged with everyone in Japan: Bam Bam Bigelow, Dave Finlay, Pegasus Kid, Wild Samoan, Super Strong Machine, Owen Hart, Kensuke Sasaki, Ron Simmons, Masa Saito. I could go on and on. Scott also took part in a couple of single bouts against Shinya Hashimoto, Kaiji Muto, and Tatsumi Fujinami, as well as the big man Vader. Norton filled in for an injured Scott, tagging with brother Rick and losing the IWGP titles, though only as a stand-in. For his second year as a wrestler, things were looking good for Scott Norton. This match put Norton on the map with 14,000 attendance at the famous Nippon Budokan and airing on Asahi TV. He would have another title match, this time tagging with Shinya Hashimoto, but lost, and even had a third title match tagging with Brad Armstrong during 1992's Fighting Spirit, but again failed to get the victory. And during May's Explosion tour, Scott had his first IWGP heavyweight title match, taking on legend Riki Choshu, but sadly failed to win the IWGP heavyweight. He finished 1992 tagging with fellow Gaijins. Scott Norton and Bam Bam lost to the Steiners at 1992's G1 Climax, but don't you worry, we are going to see Scott get the IWGP belt soon enough. Scott Norton was getting a lot of matches under his belt, up to September 23, 1992's Battle Autumn, where he lost to ongoing tag partner Tony Halm in an IWGP contender match. Scott lifted up a total of 158 matches in a year and a half, keeping a very high strong style number alongside other big gaijins like Vader, Bam Bam, Dr. Death Steve Williams, and Stan Hansen, just to name a few. Scott tagged with Super Strong Machine and won most matches during 1992's Super Grade Tag League 2. He lost another IWGP title match to the now renamed Great Muta. And at November's Wrestling Scramble 1992, finally won the IWGP tag titles, besting the Steiners in a Big Boy Beastly 12-minute and 49-second of a bout. 3 weeks would pass until the Hellraisers pinned and won the IWGP titles. There was no animosity between the team. Hawk and Norton were very good friends. At this point, Scott formed a tag team with Hercules Hernandez, naming it the Jurassic Powers. WCW got in contact with NJPW, and on March 30th of 1993, Scott debuted for Ted Turner's company on WCW Worldwide in a series of squash matches. Norton was asked to do the job for Sting at 1993 Slamboree for $2,000, and Scott declined. Norton, once back in Japan, would take part in 93's massive success Wrestling Dontaku, a joint promotional event between WWF, WCW, NJPW, and WAR. Sting and Scott wrestled that night to a no contest in front of 55,000 fans inside the Fukuoka Dome. The Hellraisers put the Jurassic Powers over, and at 1993's G1 Climax, Jurassic Powers became the IWGP Tag Champions, making Scott a 2-time IWGP Tag Champion. They would defend the titles until January 1994's Battlefield pay-per-view at the Tokyo Dome in front of 62,000 fans. They lost the belts to the Hellraisers. During his time off in the States, Scott wrestled 2 shows for indie promotion Oregon Pro Wrestling Federation. Upon his return to Japan, the Jurassic Powers teamed up with Barbarian for several 6-man tag matches. At this time, WWF offered him a tryout. Scott Norton wrestled Bob Holly in a dark match at a house show in Sunrise, Florida on September 10, 1994. Norton didn't like McMahon's deal and returned to Japan. Scott got shuffled yet again with several tag partners during most of '95, and near the end of April, he was handpicked to take part in the controversial Collision in North Korea. He wrestled Shinya Hashimoto. Scott went on record stating he felt like a prisoner once he got off the plane. There's several interviews on YouTube covering this, so let's move on. He took part in that year's G1 Climax, defeating Sasaki and Tenzan. Had his first high-profile match in the United States, being pinned by Macho Man Randy Savage during September 11's WCW Nitro, which got a 2.5 rating. He had a bit of help from the Shark. Norton did have some Saturday night squash matches. He had a match against Ice Train, which ended up in a draw. He tagged with the 4 Horsemen, and then you guessed it, returned to Japan for Hyper Battle 96, tagging with Hugh Morris and Wild Pegasus. Fire and Ice tagged up several times until they couldn't be contained, and the team imploded, resulting in a feud between the 2 behemoths that for some reason or another didn't really catch on with North American fans. The important Japan vs. United States All-Star Tournament was about to set off. Scott beat Riki Choshu in the first round, Tenzan in the quarterfinals. He would finish up 1996, taking part in World War III, making it to that year's Super Grade Tag Finals. And on December 16, 1996, on WCW Nitro, Scott Norton defected to the NWO. Norton, now part of the NWO, would tag up with partner Marcus Bagwell often. He would also tag with fellow NWO Japan members Tenzan, Masahiro Chono, NWO Sting, and over in the States, Vicious and Delicious were created. While in Japan, Scott couldn't take part of being in every single NWO storyline or even being part of the background, which was why he wasn't heavily utilized outside of tag and squash matches when he was stateside. He never really moved outside of the mid-card bouts. Norton and Bagwell would wrestle Japanese regulars like Choshu, Sasaki, Muto, Hashimoto, but once stateside, those teams would change over to the likes of Public Enemy, 4 Horsemen, Harlem Heat, Lex and Giant, the Guerreros, Steiners, Faces of Fear, Dungeon of Doom, and Blue Bloods, just to name some. He was on WCW TV a lot, but not utilized to his full potential. Even with exposure on Nitro, Thunder, and almost every single pay-per-view at the time, WCW was dropping the ball where NJPW was slam dunking it. Norton would go on to win the vacant IWGP title, defeating Yuji Nagata in Kanagawa, Japan, finally becoming an ace. Scott would defend that prestigious title on American and Japanese soil until dropping the belt to longtime friend Keiji Muto at New Japan Pro Wrestling 99 Wrestling World on January 4. Norton started splitting his time between WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling even more so. Norton and NWO Japan won the 99 G1 Tag League. Not satisfied with WCW's direction, he had his last match losing to Goldberg on September 30th, WCW Thunder, in under 4 minutes. At this point, he was part of the NWO team for quite some time, so he left WCW. He would join Team 2000 and make it to the semifinals with Chono. Scott became a 2-time IWGP champion, defeating Kensuke Sasaki at 2001's Hyper Battle. I really liked these Scott Norton years from 1999 to 2006. Where he wrestled for NJPW solely. He took on a lot of up-and-comers and showed them the ropes. He lost to Don Fry at 2001's G1 World, lost the G1 Tag League to Giant Silva and Giant Singh, tagged with his buddy Rick Steiner as well as Black New Japan. Check out this period of Norton's career, it's top-notch. Norton's last IWGP Tag Title match took place on March 13, 2006, losing to Shinsuke Nakamura and Hiroshi Tanahashi. His last IWGP Heavyweight title match was June 22nd at Tucson Spirit Guerrero in Italy, losing to old friend Tenzan. Once back in the States, he worked for a couple of indie promotions. WWCW Showdown in the Desert. He was invited to take part in All Japan Pro Wrestling's 40th anniversary tour and accepted, finally wrestling for Japan's #2 company. Scott retired following his AJPW tag match with Keiji Muto. Scott made a brief comeback in 2017. Scott still makes sporadic appearances to this day on the indie scene. He tagged with original NWO members Buff Bagwell and Sean Waltman, defeating the team of Austin Arrow, Kevin O'Doyle, and Kevy Chevy. His last recorded match to date was on April 16 of 2022 for, you guessed it, New Japan Pro Wrestling in Villa Park, Illinois, teaming up with the Bullet Club and losing to United Empire. Now you can say what you will about Scott Norton. Yeah, there's not much mic skill. There's no Sting charisma. He's not gonna pull off a 450 splat. But all that doesn't really matter. He was a big man that came into the game a little late. Big, strong style looking dudes were on their way out when he was coming in. But he performed and excelled to a top spot in a very short period of time, which not many people could do. Doing big power moves, looking dominant, mean, and vicious. Scott Norton was and still is one of my favorite strong style wrestlers of all time. Thanks for your ongoing support, and I'll see you next Friday for another episode of Wrestling Through the Ages.